Which NFL teams are making the playoffs and who's staying home? It's Who's In, Who's Out on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's football station.
All right, John, who's in, who's out? Basically, we have a lot of teams in and a lot of teams out as it's Week 16 in the NFL. But first, before we get to the teams, I'm going to ask you about Carolina. They're 14-0. They can secure home field advantage with one more win or even a Cardinals loss or tie. But let's talk about 16-0. Should they go for it? Do you rest your guys for the playoffs? What happens here?
I'll tell you, you almost have to do it for the players' sake. You have to go for it. But when you see this league week in and week out, and we've seen it just recently.
Jonathan Stewart, they're dealing with a serious injury.
Andy Dalton in Cincinnati, Tyrann Mathieu with the torn ACL for Arizona. Every week these key guys go down. And you mentioned Stewart. How about Cam was banged up a couple times against the Giants?
Greg Olsen hurt himself last week.
I mean, my mentality is you can't legislate injuries, but this year you have to hold your breath. I think it's almost better to be 13-1 where you don't have to worry about it, because if you're 14-0, you have to go for the perfect season, and I think the Panthers will.
Yeah, I mean, it happened with Indianapolis when Peyton Manning was there. They rested him. They wound up making it to the Super Bowl, but they lost. Probably didn't have an effect. It's happened some previous times.
Yeah, I understand both sides of the coin, and I wouldn't criticize them if they did shut it down. I don't think they will. I think the players want to go for history, and I think that's the way it's going to go. But I've always said that if you're in Week 16, Week 17, and I know a lot of the other teams who are waiting for people to lose get upset when they see people sit. But if you're in a position to where you've earned it, you can do whatever you want, and I don't have any issue with it.
I don't care, fantasy football-wise. If we got to sit Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, we're going to sit Tom Brady and Gronk.
Yeah, come on. I don't care about your fantasy football playoffs.
Although I am in the finals this week.
If I'm Bill Belichick, I just good for you, and I hope you win, but he doesn't care.
Well, NFC, Carolina, they have the first round bye. That's been secured. If they win one more time, that's the number one seed, home field advantage. The NFC runs through Charlotte. Probably going to happen. Arizona, 2 seed. That's pretty secure.
The Cardinals play the Packers. So remember, the Packers are still in the equation if they can pull off that upset. But the Cardinals would have to lose out, and the Packers would have to win out, which means not only beating Arizona, but also beating Minnesota in Week 17.
How much of the loss of Honey Badger will really impact their Super Bowl chances?
I think it would. Defensive Player of the Year voting, mine would be Aaron Donald, number 1, J.J. Watt, number 2, and Tyrann Mathieu, number 3. That's how dominant he's been. It's going to affect them seriously moving forward. It's a key injury, but I think they have enough where they're going to certainly be able to lock down that second seed.
Green Bay Packers, they've clinched a playoff spot because of that Giants loss, but they still need another victory, and Minnesota lost to claim the NFC North title and a home playoff game at Lambeau Field. How do you think the NFC North shapes out, John?
Well, to me, the Vikings haven't proven they can beat the Packers. In Week 17, those two teams play each other in Lambeau. I think Minnesota will beat an Odell Beckham-less Giants team this week, and that'll set up winner-take-all for the division. But until the Vikings actually beat the Packers, I can't pick them to do it, so I still have Green Bay winning the NFC North.
The Redskins right now have the 4 seed, the NFC East. They control their own destiny. So do the Eagles, of course. But if the Redskins beat the Eagles on Saturday, they win the division. They will host a playoff game, and that playoff game would be, as it stands now, John, against Seattle. They've clinched. They're in the wild card. So pretty much we can say that Seattle's going to be at the winner of the NFC East, depending on what happens with Minnesota, I guess.
Yeah, most likely. It depends what happens in those final 2 weeks with the Packers and Vikings. But that's the most likely scenario. And obviously the Seahawks would be a heavy favorite no matter who wins the NFC East, whether it be the Redskins or if the Eagles pull off a minor miracle, or if the Giants pull off a major miracle, they're still in it. the Seahawks are looking awful good as a potential wild card team.
That offense has taken off without Jimmy Graham. I mean,
amazing.
It's really amazing that he's been injured. He's out for the rest of the year, so they don't have to worry about fitting him in. They can just take off with Doug Baldwin and the rookie Lockett there. It's amazing how that passing game has taken off without Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, and you have to talk about when we say MVP, I think Cam Newton's the MVP of this league. But all of a sudden, I got Russell Wilson in the top 3 or 4 with Carson Palmer and Tom Brady. Hey, no quarterback in football has played better than he has during this mini Seahawks run. And I expect that team to win out and go into the playoffs very hot. And nobody is going to want to see the Seahawks in front of them.
So that's pretty much the NFC. It's pretty much figured out with a couple seedings to worry about. Atlanta has an outside shot. Philly is still in it. And the Giants are in it as well. The rest of the teams, they're done. They've been eliminated. Tampa, St. Louis, Saints, Chicago, Detroit, San Fran, and Dallas. We'll see you at the 2016 NFL Draft. AFC, John, Patriots, number 1 seed. They're in the playoffs. They have a first-round bye. With one more win, the Pats will be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, and they're most likely going to get it. To me, the Patriots is more about can they get Julian Edelman back for the playoffs. And if they do, by the way, is he going to be healthy enough to make a difference? Because remember, we're talking all year about the Cowboys getting Dez Bryant back. And when they did, he wasn't the same player. So being on the field and being what you were are two different things. I think with a healthy Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman, the Patriots are the significant favorite from the AFC side as things stand now because of the Andy Dalton injury. But we'll have to see if Edelman is what he was, and I think that's an unlikely scenario.
Seeds 2 and 3, Cincinnati and Denver right now. That's a Monday Night Football game, probably the game of the year for ESPN there. Cincinnati and Denver. If Cincinnati wins that game, they lock up the 2 seed. If Denver wants to get into the 2 seed and get that bye, they have to start by beating Cincinnati, John.
Yeah, and remember, it's not Peyton Manning against Andy Dalton. It's Brock Osweiler against A.J. McCarron.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mike Tirico didn't mention that last night, did he?
So it's not, and that's why if you're the Patriots, you're sitting there and going, nobody's had more injuries than New England. But, you know, with all due respect to LeGarrette Blount or Edelman or Easley or the 100 other injuries the Patriots had on their offensive line, they still have their quarterback. And the other 2 contenders in the AFC don't have their quarterback. So, to me, things are looking difficult for both of those teams, Broncos or the Bengals.
AFC South, right now the leader is Houston at 7-7. Indianapolis is still in it, but if Houston wins their next game, that pretty much could secure a playoff spot for the Texans.
Yeah, the only thing the Colts can hope for, the Colts have to win out and the Texans have to lose both of their final 2 games. So that's the only way the Colts are getting in. And Chuck Pagano's already said Andrew Luck is not playing this week. So it's looking more and more like the Houston Texans are going to be the AFC South champions. Jacksonville also has an outside chance, but if you saw them, they're the only team Atlanta's been able to beat in the last month plus. They're just not a good football team. So looks like the AFC South is that conference's version of the NFC East, and there's going to be a bad football team making the playoffs, and it's going to be the Houston Texans.
Wild card spots for the AFC, John. Kansas City, they've won 8 in a row. One more win, 9 in a row would put them in the playoffs at 9-5. That team, they lost Jamal Charles, and that offense has gotten better, it seems, because Jeremy Maclin has been heavily involved in that offense. How about Kansas City, John?
Yeah, I'm proud to say I've been on the Chiefs bandwagon, never left it since even when they were 1-5, because I kind of saw their schedule, and it was really difficult early in the season. There's 3 consecutive games against the Broncos and the Bengals and Packers. And that's when all those teams were playing lights out, remember. And they steadied the ship. Give credit to Andy Reid. He's proven he could do that in the past. He's done it again. He's got a very steady hand. He's got that team in the playoffs. because let's face it, their schedule is really, really easy, and there's no way. I think it's the Browns and the Raiders the final 2 weeks. There's no way they're going to lose both of those games.
Pittsburgh, they're in the 6th spot right now. That huge win over the Broncos. That was a huge win based on tiebreaker scenarios, trying to beat out the Jets for that spot. Another team, John, you lose Le'Veon Bell, and that offense has gotten better with D'Angelo Williams and Antonio Brown, 18 catches on Sunday. The Steelers at 9-5, the Jets on the outside looking in. How about Pittsburgh, John?
Yeah, I don't know if it's gotten better because Le'Veon Bell is that good, but that would be scary.
It hasn't missed a beat, I'll tell you that much.
No, it hasn't. D'Angelo Williams has been great, but the Steelers are sort of like the Seahawks of the AFC. Nobody wants to see them because of that offense and that receiving course and how good Ben has been playing. And again, if you look at their schedule, it's Baltimore, who's just got 22 different players on injured reserve, and Cleveland to finish the season. They're going to win out, and they're going to get to the playoffs, which means the poor New York Jets are going to be a really, really good football team that misses the playoffs because somebody from the AFC South has to get in.
The Jets could conceivably go 11-5 and miss out on the playoffs.
And I think that's going to happen.
That's unbelievable.
They're probably not going to beat New England, so they're probably going to finish 10-6. But nonetheless, it's a really good team. Todd Bowles has done a good job. Ryan Fitzpatrick has done a tremendous job as their sort of stopgap bridge quarterback. But it's not going to roll their way because Pittsburgh and Kansas City keep coming.